and welcome to Redneck Caviar, the podcast where we talk about Southern culture and anything that entails. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, Google, and Stitcher, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel, Southern Cuisine. I'm your host, Benjamin, and I'm joined here today by Patrick Scott Armstrong. He's the host of the Don't Stop Plate podcast and an expert in the food industry if there ever was one. I figure I did the intro afterwards for the last one, so I figure this might be the better way to go.
That's how I do it, man. I just roll into the conversation. You know what I mean? I do an intro later. That way I can just, formal. I don't know. It feels weird. It feels weird to do. For me, it just feels weird to do an intro in front of the person on Zoom.
Yeah,
like talk as if they're, you know what I mean? Talk as if they're not there, basically. That seems weird to me. So I just don't, do it. Feels weird, right? Feels weird. Now, when I did them in person, I would do that. When we did it in person, that didn't feel as weird for some reason. But I don't know if I would change it. This way, it's the best to me.
Yeah, I mean, I did mine just audio last time. And it was pretty tense. More tense than it should have been, let's just say. So anyway, how was the move to Dallas? How are you settling in?
No, great. Forget that. I want to hear about this tense conversation. What do you mean tense? What happened? Were there some digital swings thrown, as we say?
No, none of that. It was just I don't know. I felt like I was kind of the conversation more or less. Like people that don't like to ask questions, weren't very curious, like that.
I thought you meant like you were fighting about something.
No, I try not to go there, especially not with another American, especially when I don't know, because the reactions can be quite tense. Sure, as you know, especially in Texas.
Yeah, man. I mean, you've seen a couple videos that I've done, right? Like I've gotten into a couple verbal battles on the podcast. I mean, just a couple out of over 100 episodes. So it's definitely not something we try to do. It's always by accident, right? It's always didn't mean for that to happen. That's pretty rare. If you're not looking for it, that's rare. That's going to be a rare moment. Yeah, it's always usually politics. That's what's going to cause right now. That's what causes tension is politics and anything having to do with COVID right now. If you're strong, an opinion on something in particular, one way or the other, if somebody says something, you're not going to be able to let it go. And they're gonna confront you on it, right? So there's been. I mean, I just did one podcast with a guy where it was coming on and talk about his business, and we didn't even talk about his business because the mask thing came up at the very beginning, just as a breaking the ice, sort of conversation, right? Like, hey, we lifted the mask mandate in Texas, blah blah blah. It was just sort of the beginning of the conversation, just like we were having. Hey, how you doing? How's the move? That sort of thing. And then we didn't leave that conversation the whole time, the whole podcast, because it kept going back. He was like, well, you said that, let me respond to that thing you said, right? It was like, he couldn't let that go. And then he would say something, I was like, I can't let that go. I was like, and then we just kept going back and forth. And then I felt necessary at that point to sort of stick up, even if it wasn't my position, just the opposite position, right? Devil's advocate, so that there's not just one side being blared.
That's my favorite game. Was he very pro-mask then?
No, not necessarily. He was actually more like, what the science is on mask and is sort of like, maybe we don't need to be wearing masks. I don't want to speak for him. You have to listen to the podcast. I think it just came out. Tim Urban. It's a Tim Urban podcast. And yeah, he kind of is, well, the science is he tried to compare it to the flu, right? There's just a few things that he just he was cool. Don't get me wrong. Very protective, understands it's a real disease, but at the same time, and I get it, man. There's just, people just feel lied to, I guess, by the news. That's the biggest comment you hear from people, right? I can't trust the news. I can't trust the news. I can't trust the news. So I don't know how you really get around that. I don't know how the news beats that, right? Like, how does the news get around gaining the trust of the public when the news is a big thing that's not any one person or company? So it's not like you can have a meeting and throw down some, law, rules or whatever. It's like, it's just thousands of companies all across the world, all with their own agenda. Good luck.
Yeah, I think the news has a tendency to dramatize things, though, so I can't really blame them, or him specifically.
I mean, they need clicks. They need clicks, right? I mean, that journalism is just like, look, CNN is just like ABC trying to get you to watch the latest hit sitcom. The same thing CNN or Fox is trying to do to get you to watch their news program. I mean, it's the same thing. So they're going to try to market to you to get you, right? The trailer for a movie is the same thing as some chyron going across the news thing, breaking news. It's that same thing trying to bring you in. It's the same thing. I mean, yeah, there is a blurred line between entertainment and, news. And what is news? What does that mean to somebody? When you hear news, because you grew up in, even though you have lived in Texas, that is true. You have had that experience. You spent a lot of time in Europe. So, like, what's the attitude of news there from what you've experienced?
To be fair, I don't watch the news very much, precisely because I don't want to say I don't trust it, but I prefer to get my information from other sources, and that source is definitely not a news anchor.
Sure.
Reading from a teleprompter, but I mean, it's generally the same. I mean, people with opinions, they often clash Piers Morgan, you've probably heard of him. He's one of the bigger.
He's in the news here right now over all the royalty, Meghan Markle shit that they're saying, like, he's a racist. But here, people, half the country thinks he's a racist here.
I'll be honest, I mean, with the royal family, America probably has a stronger opinion, or are talking about them more than the actual Britain. Well, that's probably because Meghan is American and everything, so.
Yeah, exactly. That's the weird thing, right? Like, that's the weird pull for Americans at this point, in a way that some Americans feel like connected to it some way, right? Because she's American, so they feel like, I don't know. But we have a weird opinion of kings and queens over here, as you may know, as American. Like, we went against the king, right? I mean, that's how this whole country got started. So we don't really have a high opinion of such an antiquated system to us, right? Like, we're all about freedom here, freedom. So, like, you mentioned king and queen. I mean, it's just like this crazy, we're not down for it. But although people are all happy to read in the newspaper or magazine about the queen's, new dress and shit. So, like, it's a weird thing. We love the shows about it on BBC. You know what I mean? Yeah, but we don't want a king. We would never. I don't understand. I mean, most people that you talk to don't really. I don't know. They're either indifferent on it, or they just don't approve of the system of royalty, right? Or I heard this term this week I'd never heard before, a royalist. I'd never heard that term before, and I guess it's somebody who truly believes in, the system and whatnot. And I guess that's what Piers Morgan is, a royalist, and that's why he's defending it so much. And I find that odd that you would want a king and queen and princes and shit, like, even in this day. I find that odd.
Make a huge difference though? Like, I mean, everyday lives here compared to like the US aren't all that different.
Not at all. I mean, that is the truth. Day to day, like, you're just living your life. It's not like, they're like, the king says you must do this when you walk into a store or some shit. Like, that's not the case at all. Or, I
was going to say, it's like how America got started, like an alternative to that. Because, like, before in England, it was always like the king's deer. And you couldn't touch the king's deer.
Totally.
And in America, you could just like it was the people's land.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
but yeah,
Exactly.
nowadays I don't.
That's why we can't get behind it, dude. That's why it's odd to us. Because there's also, like a lot of money that goes to it. Like, what's the point of it? I mean, really, that's the question. It's like, what's the point of it? What was the point of having it? I mean, it's a monarchy, right? It's sort of a dictatorship, but like, how much power do they really have over
I think they
people?
have significant amount. I think
You
surely,
think so? Really? That's
surely they have
crazy.
influence.
I
Which
definitely
could be enough.
influence. Well, influence, I guess, is power. You're right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, it baffles me for sure. It baffles anybody here who's not used to that system. I'm just not used to that system. Didn't grow up with that. So I don't know. I don't know how to support it. Anyway, whatever.
So are you a supporter of the Biden administration, or do you lean more right?
No, I support it for sure. I definitely don't lean right on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not for any particular reason. Just things I want to see happen in this country. The right's not particularly fighting for. So why would I vote for that? Right? They're not fighting for the things that I want to fight for. So no, definitely support the Biden administration. I support any administration that's in office except for the last one we had. That is the only time in my whole life I've never supported the presidency, regardless of what side it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very,
It's not at
very
least entertaining
crazy.
to you.
It was entertaining for sure. There's definitely entertaining parts about it. Absolutely. But damage, came as a result of that entertainment, as well. So at what cost is that entertainment? But I guess, yeah, if we're going to sit back and laugh at things, for sure, he was, Donald Trump was funny. He definitely did a lot of funny things. Now, I don't think knowingly he was trying to be funny, but he just did a lot of funny things and said a lot of funny shit. And, his tweets and all that. And he was the news cycle every day for a little over. He was in America every single day. And honestly, it's been odd. For me, it's been a relief, and fantastically a relief, that since he left the presidency, he's barely in the news here. I mean, he's barely here, and I love it. I freaking love it. I have no problem with it. I'm just in and out with a comment here or there. Get out of like some, Christopher Guest movie. Like he walked up at a wedding, took the mic, right, to congratulate the bride. This is recent. This is like a week ago. And instead started going off on election fraud at this person's wedding, right? So like, I mean, and at the very end, he's like, yeah, okay, congratulations to the couple. It's like, oh my God, dude, that's where he's at. Once the most powerful man in the world has now been, demoted to crazy uncle at the fucking wedding reception. kind of, apropos, in my opinion.
Thankfully, it died out quickly. All the fires. So, yeah.
I mean, sort of, yeah. In a way, it kind of did. In a way, it really did. At this point, there's other people trying to step up and take that role that he had. A leadership role in the GOP and in the Republican Party, even though he's claiming to come back and run in 2024 and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen then. That's a long ways away. Trump has a, tendency to constantly be flipping around. So I actually don't think that's going to happen. Because if he loses again, that will just be not good for his ego, and I just don't think he's going to take that chance, and he'll say something about it. And someone else will go in, and then he'll just criticize that person to hell. They'll lose, and then he'll just criticize. He prefers to be the armchair quarterback rather than actual quarterback, to be honest with you. So, I think he'd prefer to just criticize from the side, which I think that's what he'll do. But who knows, dude? Who knows all this shit? All the QAnon shit died down. Did you see that? That's what I'm most fascinated about, fucking this QAnon shit. It's fascinating to me. Yeah, that's so fat. What do you know about Q over there in Europe? What are you hearing over there?
About QAnon?
Yeah, what do you hear? What do you know about?
I've never heard about that. What's that?
You never heard of QAnon? Really? That's great, dude. I mean, that's honestly, that's fantastic. But QAnon has been... Now. Well, it's a huge movement that took over America, and that's the whole reason of the Capitol insurrection, right? All the people that stormed the Capitol were all Q people. We're all,
I see.
The Q movement. Q is, for the listeners, most of the listeners, whoever listens to this probably knows who Q is. If they don't, it's somebody who anonymously was posting on these boards online, first 4chan, then 8chan, and was supposedly an insider in the American government, right? Top level official who would just make these posts, these sort of like, hey, this is going to happen, or this is going to happen. I have info on that, right? Like stuff like that. And people got behind it, dude, and started believe this guy, believe this person. And this whole movement came out. I mean, searching on YouTube, there's people literally make their whole living off of it now. I mean, it's a huge thing. It's took over the Republican Party. Right, there's people in Congress now who are Q people, right? They wear Q pins, and like it's this movement. It's this crazy thing, and nobody knows who he is. There's this documentary that just came out on HBO that supposedly reveals who Q is.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. I mean, it'll be in American history, a part of American history forever. I mean, the movement hasn't died really. He hasn't posted in a few months, but people still are about it. They still think something's going to happen, right? They keep making predictions like, no, March, something's going to happen. Then when that doesn't happen, they go, no, April this. And then, no, when that doesn't happen, they go, no. Actually, it's the end of May, right? And it's just that is going to continue to happen forever with this Q thing. But I'm so surprised you never heard of Q. I guess it's really more of it's definitely an American politics,
Yeah.
Something in the news here, but I don't know. I guess I thought you would have heard of that.
No, I mean, I don't think most Europeans would have. I mean,
yeah, I guess you're right.
In terms of American news, we get whatever shouts loudest that week or month.
Sure.
So I guess like a ton of Black Lives Matter things. Recently, a bunch of climate change stuff because Texas has had such like insane weather fluctuations. But yeah, like anything that's
interesting.
Doesn't get like screamed from the mountaintops. It doesn't really reach over here.
Sure. No, I mean, I get it. I wouldn't know about any other movement coming from some other country unless, like you said, whatever screams the loudest. It's definitely all over there now. I mean, if you start searching for it now, now you're going to see it everywhere. Watch. Now that I've told you about it, now you'll probably start to notice things. Like, oh, that's what that is, and that's what that meant, and yeah. And supposedly, dude, I watched the HBO documentary. It's just some dude in the Philippines. Okay, some fucking motherfucker, some fucking like dude who literally sits in a room and fucks a sex doll. I'm not joking. There's a documentary. I mean, they went to the Philippines and hung out with this guy, and he just has a sex doll. He just fucks a sex doll, and he's been Q the whole time. He took over the American public and transformed and created absolutely insane people. And these people have gone on to murder people, dude, and kill people. Like, dude, remember the Walmart shooter? That's Q. That's like he was inspired by Q. And he put his manifesto on the same site, on the same board, the 4chan shit. So a lot of the people that committed these crimes were inspired by this dude. So it's like a big deal here, like this motherfucker. So like, and to see him in the documentary too, like, oh man, it just makes you want to just like rip this guy through the screen. Like, you're just playing. You think it's a game. He thinks it's a game. He's just on his computer like, look, everybody's getting behind what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah, sure.
But it's like, dude, what you've created is insane, you know, absolutely insane. Yeah. I mean, people think if you said that here, right? If you come to the state and you talk to somebody about Q, right? A normal person thinks that person's crazy. Like that's a crazy conspiracy here to think. That's like flat earth shit. Right? That's what we equate it to, like a normal thinking person. Right? But it's huge, dude. There's millions of people behind it here. You know? So I don't know, it's crazy. Anyway, that's what I've been deep into to see what's gonna happen you know, with that, dude. It's I mean, because dude, they think crazy things. They think there's a cabal of like underground group of celebrities and Democrats, of course, you know, raping children, having sex with children, and drinking their blood. No joke. That's what they think's happening, and that there's this whole system they got of transferring them around on trains and, you know, planes and whatever. Dude, I mean, it's like, what the hell is going on, you know? Or that you know, a basement in a pizza shop is running a sex, you know, something or other, and some guy went to this pizza shop, dude, and he shot up the pizza shop, killed like 3 people, thinking that there was some, and it's like the pizza shop doesn't even have a basement. You know, it's like there's no basement there. It's like, dude, you know, that's where these things can take you. You know, and that's the argument for freedom of speech right now. It's part of these things. What should we allow online? What should we allow people online to say because of what the potential consequences are? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
what do you do? I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about freedom of speech?
I think, I mean, it's a bit hard to not like simmer it down to any one thing, because on one hand I think that people should have enough independence and just think for themselves enough that they don't latch themselves onto someone else's cause and then use it to justify all this shit. But then again, at some point you shouldn't be able to just say anything. But then again, I think if you're the one like participating in riots, you're slightly more responsible than anyone who went and quote unquote incited it online. Because I'm sure you see a ton of shit online. I definitely see a ton, and neither of us go and burn buildings or riot Capitol buildings. So
yeah, that's a good point.
At one point, you kind of have to take responsibility for your own thing, because regardless of whether you have like freedom of speech or not, I think it's much more dangerous to suppress these nutheads, these nutcases, because then they go underground and then they meet like people under there and they start to conspire. And that's when these movements get out of hand, you know, like the KKK, for example, it's all very visible and everything. So as long as you can see it all, it's not all that dangerous. Not as much as it could be if it were all underground, for example. But then again, I mean, if like these platforms like Facebook and everything where you have free speech, I think it should definitely be up to the leaders of that company to suppress quote unquote freedom of speech, because they have a right to, I think. I mean, if they don't want nasty and racist things in their platform. But I mean, there's always other ways to get your word out. I don't think like saying a particular thing will ever be outlawed, because then I think that would turn more to communist or a dictatorship. Yeah.
I mean, that is definitely the argument here too. Everything you just said. I mean, that's definitely a position here. The question is, who decides that stuff? You know, I think everyone agrees that there should be some sort of. Okay, well, let me start over. It's very easy to say, okay, yeah, you shouldn't be allowed to just say anything. Okay, great. Who decides that? Right? So that's the argument. That's why we have freedom of speech in America. Because who can decide what's hate speech or what's wrong or what, you know what I mean? We don't even have hate speech laws here, right? Like the only thing here you can't say is if you incite violence. So you can't incite violence. That's it.
Yeah, but I
everything
think
else you can say.
But like people, like where's the line with like hate speech? Because the line of what hate speech is will always be a very not everyone will have the same view on what hate speech is. Like some people in America would
Who
consider
decides that line?
Exactly. So why draw a line at all? Especially since it takes two. I mean, one to say it and one to listen. So
that, yeah, and that's the whole point of what our freedom of speech here is in America, right? And it's the unique to the rest of the world, right? We have the most unique freedom of speech laws. So yeah, I mean that's basically our solution here. But people do want to change that, right? They do, like you said, you think that companies should have a responsibility. Well, that's an argument here. There are people that don't think that, and there are people that do. Like you said, well, we shouldn't suppress this speech because it'll go underground and build and this and that. Well, see, there are people that don't think that. They think the opposite, right? But people that think just like that as well. Don't suppress it. It's just going to grow. Or no, we need to keep it off, and not give it oxygen either, right? So, there's arguments to both. I don't know. It's a tough. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? I do agree with that. But speech, like you said, there's two parts, really. It's the other person listening to it. So how do you control that? How do you control how people disseminate information, right? And critical think. That's really, to me, what we should focus on. Not controlling what people are saying. You know what I mean? That's going to be real hard to do. I think it's what you said. We shouldn't really suppress it. I'm not saying we should give them a platform either, but if I hear something stupid, I'm not going to be like, oh, you know what? They're right. White people are the best. Like that's not they're not going to convince me, right? There's nothing, it's not going to happen. So again, by getting that person and saying, just cutting them off from everything, what are you really going to do to that person? What is it? What becomes enticing? Something you can't get a hold of, right? Something you ban. Right? If you start banning this, that becomes enticing. You want to know more about it and find out about it. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I mean, a common thing in the US, I mean, a common theme that revolves around a lot of things, especially like freedom of speech and gun control and things like that, is the cost of freedom.
That's what it is here, dude. Everything's about the cost of freedom. Any decision that's made here, that's the discussion for a lot of people. What freedom are we losing?
Thought about it a lot, and the more I think about it, the more I legitimize it in my own head. Because I always think at the end of the day, the government could overthrow people in the UK significantly easier than in the US. So, I mean, I suppose the risk of the UK or something similar becoming like a dictatorship is far greater than it is in the US. In the UK, because in the US, anyone could, or the majority of the people, still have the opportunity to fight that. Whereas here, if a government decided to crack down, which I think it's worth personally, this quote unquote cost of freedom, especially since the pros and cons aren't really all that, or the lines aren't exactly all that clear. Like, for example, gun crime in America is obviously much worse and things like that. But in the UK, things like robbery and assault are significantly worse, like tenfold almost. So
Yeah.
what's really better?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, look, America's huge, dude. You're talking 50 states here.
Yeah.
It would be a lot to take over this country. You know, it would be a lot for the government to overthrow us, you know, as citizens. Plus, the people that would have to overthrow us are your neighbors and friends and fucking, you know, people you know. They're not just going to fucking turn on their neighbors all of a sudden, you know. Because that, you know, I remember that being an argument when Trump was president. Oh, they're going to take over, you know, martial law and they would take over no, they're not, dude. People, who are you? I mean, yeah, maybe like a few people within the ranks would whatever, but majority of people, they're not, that's not what they're going to do. You know, so that is tough though, dude. That's a tough argument. I mean, right now, gun control is a huge, you know, conversation right now, especially literally today, dude. Biden just introduced six new laws or enactments or something. I can't remember what it was to combat this, because we've had several mass shootings recently. Since things started to open up, all of a sudden we got these mass shootings, and some of them have been pretty graphic, dude, to be honest with you. And
Yeah, that's true.
You know, dude, it's a tough argument. Look, you know, I'm in Texas. I'm going to have a different position on guns, and I'm a liberal in Texas, but you know, I just don't think taking the guns away is the solution. I really don't. Look, yes, it would save some lives. Okay? If you literally got rid of every single gun, yes, you would save lives from people getting shot by guns. Okay? But does that mean other people wouldn't die other ways? You know, I don't know. I mean, it's just something innate in America, and like, people are generally good with guns and they know what to do and they're responsible with them. That's the truth. I don't know, man. It's just such a tough, you know, it's like if a person loses their mind, what do they have access to? That's what they're going to use to cause damage. I mean, that's just the truth, right? When you were a kid in your room and you got angry, you used what you had in your room, right, to throw things around or whatever. So, like, I get it. If you're angry and you have access to something, you know, it's tough, dude. Again, it's at the cost of freedom for others, right? It's like, it's just kind of what happens if we want to live in a society, you know. Plus, I think America, too, is like, with guns especially, it's rural and urban, dude. If you live out in the country, you need a gun. Okay? The cops aren't showing up if you call them in 5 minutes. It could take the sheriff or a deputy 45 minutes or an hour to get to you. So you're like, I need my, and I get it. Or animals, you know, you live out in the country. Like, dude, people don't understand that. Like, it blows my mind that people can't understand that. So in a way, we need two sort of laws, really, to be frank with you, like city laws and country laws, really. I don't have guns. I personally, I don't fuck with them. Not to say I've shot lots of guns. They can be fun. I get the excitement behind the power of shooting a gun. It is fun. Why do you think Call of Duty is so popular? Hello. It's fun. Okay, to mimic, right? Everybody wants to be some fucking super secret agent, man. So I get it. I mean, I get the romance of it, I guess, is really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think people should have access, but it's maybe the barriers for entry should just be a lot higher.
Yeah, but see, you got people that like, nope, they go, nope, because they're purist. See, that's the thing in America, dog. We have very fine lines here in America. People aren't very nuanced. So they draw lines, and it cannot go past that, no matter what, right? So it's like I agree with what you're saying, right? And there's a lot of people that do, but you've got purists that say no, you can't make it harder for anybody to get access to a gun. I should be able to just get it, and that's not the issue. The issue is mental health, right? They're going to point the finger to something else that's not the weapon. So access should be. I mean, there are people that think you should just be able to go get a gun like a gallon of milk. And there are places here that you can do that. I mean, Walmart sells guns. You can literally get a gallon of milk and a gun at the same time here. So, and that doesn't seem odd to me because I've grown up with it my whole life. So, the culture, it's just culture, dude. I don't think people understand that too outside of this country. It's the culture here.
No, they don't.
If you don't understand the culture, you're not going to understand the argument, right? Because you're going to have a European mindset or whatever mindset of where you live, of what you think where we live should be like. Does that make sense? Same thing if we're trying to, understand, y'all's position on something. People take very ignorant stances here. They have no clue what they're fucking talking about. I mean, I remember talking to people here about Brexit. It's like, dude, what the fuck do you know? What do you know about, what's happening over there? You have no clue. And here you have this such strong opinion. It's really the battle for the people there who are living it, who it's going to affect. They are the ones that know about it. So yeah, it's tough, man. It's a tough situation with that, but it's at the forefront, dude. That's the biggest conversation right now. Is gun control for sure. It will always be at the forefront.
Especially in the South.
Yeah, abortion, gun control, and education, healthcare. These are the top things that are always at the forefront of the conversation, constantly.
Yeah, I agree.
Here, anyway, in this place, in this beautiful state, Redneck Caviar, his name.
Yeah.
No. I love this redneck. Redneck's such a funny term here because I was thinking about that. I was thinking, a real redneck doesn't want to be called a redneck by somebody who's not a redneck. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Let's say you come over here to Texas and you rent a truck and you're heading out east to somewhere place and you stop in a little town to get some gas. Okay? This is very typical. It's usually where these interactions happen. And you go into the gas station and you get some, hey, what's up, redneck? Listen, this is not going to be good. Okay, it's not going to be good. But Joe Schmo that comes in there all the time, who's a redneck, honestly, rednecks don't even use that term, to be frank with you. They're not calling each other rednecks.
No,
maybe as a joke. I don't know. Yeah, I guess. Definitely something we use here in Texas for sure for people out in the country. These rednecks, it's kind of like, but they got terms for city slickers, they call us, or other terms for city folk, people that are in the city that don't know.
Redneck was also like a name for like coal miners who'd wear red bandanas on their necks. So you'd be a redneck now.
Yeah, redneck. And it's also just from like your neck getting red, being out in the sun. That's literally the most common definition we know here.
That's definitely the one, there. But I think like where all the coal mines are in like the Carolinas and stuff.
Okay. Oh yes, yes.
Appalachia.
Yeah.
I suppose it'd be much more common there to have it in that sense.
For sure. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. What else? What are we talking about?
I'd say we're almost out of time anyway.
Okay. Bam. Look. Flew by.
Yeah, certainly. I'm going to go get Fried.
Oh, hilarious. Well, yeah,
Let's
I
see
mean,
what
it's
works then.
late for you.
Yeah, almost 5. Almost quitting
Yeah.
time,
Yeah,
as
it's
they
quitting
say in the
time.
South.
That's right. Quitting time.
Although I've never heard anyone there say it.
Oh, yeah. Maybe in a movie, right? I'm sure it gets said. It's quitting time. Time to get the
Yeah,
fuck out of here. That's what people say here. It's time to get the
yeah,
fuck out of here.
I'd say so too.
All right, dude.
Well, it's
Well,
been having you on. I'll talk to you later.